Hello again, rail fans, and welcome back to another video. Hold on just a second. I don't think we're in our home state of Ohio, aren't we? Well, the answer to that question is no. As some of you may recall, in September of 2020, I went on an out-of-state trip to Altoona, Pennsylvania with avid YouTuber and Central Ohio Model Railroad Club member BuckeyeNationRailroader. And now, just over a year and a half later, he's at it once again. Although this time, he invited me to go on a trip with him to Galesburg, Illinois, and Rochelle, Illinois, as well as making a couple stops in between. After several months of planning and getting a new camera and tripod for the trip, on June 17th, 2022, the trip began. After making the 6-hour drive up to Illinois and we got into the town of Galesburg, we decided to go 5 miles to the west of Galesburg in Cameron, Illinois. Here, BNSF's Chillicothe subdivision utilizes a bridge to cross BNSF's Ottumwa subdivision. The reason why we chose this place to start was because we wanted to see Amtrak's California Zephyr and Southwest Chief at this particular location. The first train we saw on this trip was a westbound BNSF intermodal train on the Chillicothe subdivision, as he was doing 70 miles an hour over the bridge crossing the Ottumwa subdivision. Mixed into the locomotive consist on the front of the train were 2 BNSF units, a KCS unit, and a Norfolk Southern unit. As we were about to find out, even though with 4 locomotives on the front of the train, this intermodal train was equipped with 3 mid-train DPUs, 2 BNSF, 1 Norfolk Southern. After watching the intermodal train go west across the bridge, we then saw a BNSF train coming from the other direction. Heading eastbound on the Chillicothe subdivision and crossing the bridge over the Ottumwa subdivision was a BNSF grain train. There's something I would like to point out here real quickly in terms of my new camera. Even after testing the camera a couple days prior to leaving Ohio, the quality of some of these videos still may not be the best. This was mainly due to the fact that I was still trying to familiarize myself with the new equipment, and pairing this up with a couple videos that I took on my cell phone along with the trip, you may find differences in quality between the camera and my cell phone, but just bear with me, okay? Good. Shortly after the grain train stopped, I noticed that the Ottumwa sub had a train coming as well. I switched to using my cell phone because I unfortunately didn't have enough time to level my tripod for the camera for this catch. But this is Amtrak train number 6, the eastbound California Zephyr coming out of Emeryville, California and heading to Chicago, Illinois. Soon after Amtrak train number 6 cleared, the train that we were waiting for to see in Cameron then came next, which was Amtrak train number 5, the westbound California Zephyr coming out of Chicago and heading for Emeryville, California. On this day, Amtrak train number 5 had a special locomotive leading the way. Leading number 5 today was Amtrak P42DC number 184, which is wearing a commemorative Phase 4 Heritage paint scheme. This is the first time I've seen one of Amtrak's Heritage units in person, which meant that the trip was getting off to a really good start because of this catch. Now, after watching this Heritage unit make its way through Cameron, we then came to the decision to leave Cameron to go get dinner and to check out the place in Galesburg we were going to set up shop for the first half of the trip. Unfortunately, after we moved to where we parked the car, we got the back row seat of another westbound BNSF intermodal train flying across the bridge on the Chillicothe subdivision. After leaving Cameron and getting dinner, we finally arrived in Galesburg, Illinois, at a well-known location here in town. This is Peck Park, which is a small metro park owned by the city of Galesburg, which just so happens to be next to a major junction on the BNSF railway. The tracks that you see on the screen belong to BNSF's Chillicothe subdivision. As you see here, the Chillicothe subdivision here at Peck Park goes underneath a bridge, which carries 5 other mainline tracks of BNSF through town. The reason why this place is so famous is because of how busy it is. The Chillicothe subdivision, which was former Santa Fe trackage, sees about 60 to 70 trains per day, while the other main lines through town, which were part of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, see about 30 to 40 trains a day. Putting that all together, this place sees well over 100 trains per day. The reason why we came to Peck Park so early in the trip was because we wanted to get a sample of the heavy rail action that we would see tomorrow. The action was already beginning as soon as we got to Peck Park because there was an eastbound BNSF grain train on the upper tracks of the former Burlington route already passing through. However, we were able to catch its end train DPU. About about 10 minutes later, we then see a westbound intermodal train on the BNSF Chillicothe subdivision. As I was filming this intermodal train on the Chillicothe subdivision, we will see the only disadvantage of this place. Considering that all the lines through town are in a no-horn zone, that means that trains can sneak up on you if you're not paying attention. And the first of many instances like that would happen when this westbound Autorack train snuck up on us on the Burlington route. After that BNSF intermodal train went through on the Chillicothe subdivision, I saw this mixed freight train on the former Burlington route pass the virtual railfan cam at the Amtrak station a short distance away. So I got set up for the catch, and I'm glad that I did. Two NCRC high-hood GP38-2s were trailing dead in tow behind the BNSF GEs. Throughout these locomotives' lifespans, they once served the Southern Railway, Norfolk Southern, and Wheeling and Lake Erie between the late 1970s till 2022. The pair of locomotives were sold not too long ago from their most recent owner, the Wheeling and Lake Erie, to NCRC. Now, I'm not sure what NCRC stands for, but if any of you do, a comment down below will be graciously appreciated. As the mixed freight train was crossing the bridge, another eastbound BNSF intermodal train was quickly approaching on the Chillicothe subdivision. Unlike the previous intermodal train that we saw, I had enough time to level my tripod and turn on my camera before the train made its way past Peck Park. After another load of containers and trailers made their way through Galesburg, we then see the westbound Amtrak Carl Sandburg as he was crossing the bridge on the former Burlington route, eventually reaching his destination of Chicago, Illinois. Finally, we see something on the Chillicothe subdivision that's not an intermodal train, specifically a westbound mixed freight train. This mixed freight train in particular had a Kansas City Southern SD70 Ace in the trailing position. After this mixed freight train went through on the Chillicothe subdivision, it happened to me once again. An eastbound mixed freight train on the former Burlington route made its way through without any warning, and I just barely got my cell phone recording in time to see the locomotives go by. Intermodal trains are the most common trains you can see on the Chillicothe subdivision because here's another one heading westbound passing Peck Park. this intermodal train was passing through on the Chillicothe subdivision, the grain train that we saw back in Cameron made its way through west on the former Burlington route. And the trains just keep on coming. Next up on the former Burlington route was an entire train of 2-bay covered hoppers heading eastbound on the former Burlington route, which I have reason to believe are carrying fracking sand or cement, but I'm not 100% sure. The final train we saw on this day before we had to go back to the hotel and get our sleep in for the night was an eastbound BNSF local freight on the former Burlington route. This train was most likely bound for the Galesburg Terminal Yard here in town. Well, folks, if you thought the action tonight was crazy here at Peck Park, oh boy, this was just the beginning because there was much more in store for us tomorrow, which we'll get to right now. Welcome to day 2, folks. The date is June 18th, 2022. We returned to Peck Park bright and early because we were here to spend the entire day at Peck Park watching the BNSF trains run through town. Considering the magnitude of the action here in Galesburg, I'm only going to put narration for the trains where I feel necessary. So, without further ado, let's get started. Shortly after we arrived at Peck Park, a westbound mixed freight train was making its way through on the former Burlington route, with some foreign power on point and a special locomotive within the 3-unit consist. As you just saw, a rare B40-AW was in the second position on this mixed freight train, specifically BNSF 510. I was told at some point during this section of the trip we were going to see one of these, and on this BNSF intermodal train heading eastbound on the Chillicothe subdivision, we finally did. BNSF C44-9W number 766 was in the third trailing position on this intermodal train. 766 is special for wearing Santa Fe's war bonnet paint scheme but having BNSF lettering, which makes it a BNSF fake bonnet.
perfect meat.
After the near meet between the grain train and the intermodal train, BNSF lined another eastbound through on the former Burlington route. which was another mixed freight train. This one had BNSF C44-9W number 775 in the lead, which was our second fake bonnet of the day. Now this was the train that I was prepping to see on the former Burlington route, which almost led me to miss that eastbound Autorack train on the Chillicothe subdivision. This just so happened to be another eastbound mixed freight train, presumably coming into town to head into Galesburg Yard. As you just saw, this BNSF mixed freight train had our third fake bonnet of the day, which was BNSF C44-9W717. What I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video is that Union Pacific also has trackage rights on the Chillicothe subdivision here in town. Reason why I say that is because here is one of the trains that is allowed to run the Chillicothe subdivision, which was a westbound intermodal train. I was also told that we would eventually see some of these engines while we were here, and on this westbound intermodal train on the Chillicothe subdivision, it actually had 2 of them, with the addition of a Norfolk Southern locomotive trailing 4th. The 2 C44-9Ws trailing 2nd and 3rd were wearing BNSF's first original paint scheme, that being the Heritage 1 paint scheme. As you just saw in the previous scene, as that eastbound grain train was making its way through on the Chillicothe subdivision, a yard job crossed the bridge on the former Burlington route. After the grain train cleared, I moved to the signals on the Burlington route to catch the train reversing back into Galesburg Yard. After seeing all the freight trains, we finally see another Amtrak train, which was Amtrak train number 4, the westbound Southwest Chief, coming out of Chicago, Illinois, and heading for Los Angeles, California. After the Southwest Chief made his way through, another eastbound intermodal train made its way through on the Chillicothe subdivision, with another H1C44-9W on point. After that eastbound intermodal train made its way through on the Chillicothe subdivision, another eastbound intermodal train was not too far behind it, and we were definitely in for a treat on this one. A Ferromex EMD SD70 Ace was trailing fourth on this intermodal train. Considering how rare it is to see Ferromex far from its home territories down in Mexico, this made it the train of the day, in my opinion at least. The former Burlington route was pretty quiet since the passage of the Southwest Chief until we saw this BNSF mixed freight train heading westbound coming out of Galesburg Yard. C44-9W number 5146 and SD70 Ace number 9173 are seen leading a train once again, with the addition of CSX ES44AH 3051. As that was happening, another eastbound intermodal train made its way through on the Chillicothe subdivision. As you just saw, rounding out the consist on this intermodal train was BNSF C44-9W number 4711, which was our fourth and final fake bonnet we saw here in Galesburg. The former Burlington route had another Amtrak train descend when Amtrak train number 5 came once again on another daily run from Chicago, Illinois to Emeryville, California. After that intermodal train made its way through, another yard job came on the former Burlington route and crossed the bridge over the Chillicothe subdivision. When he started the reverse move back into the yard, I climbed up the embankment next to the signals, which I wouldn't recommend that you would do, but the reason why I did that was to get a decent shot of the slug set that was on the front of the train. final train we saw at Peck Park was Amtrak train number 3, the eastbound Southwest Chief coming out of Los Angeles, California and heading for Chicago, Illinois. After seeing that clip of that BNSF grain train seen from the highway, we officially come full circle for the first half of our Illinois trip. What else can I really say about this? Peck Park was an amazing place to stay and watch trains for the day. If you stay for the amount of time that we did, you would get a treasure trove of good stuff, and I highly recommend that you visit this place. Now, I still got more of this trip on the way. Stay tuned for next week when we cover the second half of our trip when we went to Rochelle, Illinois, so mark your calendars. Anyways, leave a like and or a comment down below to share your thoughts on the video. If you enjoy the content that I produce, consider subscribing to my channel and tapping the bell button to be notified when a new video gets posted. Anyways, that's all for the time being. This is All Ohio Rail Fan, signing off.